Welcome, everyone, to episode 65 of the Gully Blanchard podcast. My name is Ryan, coming from the great state of Sacramento, California, home of the 1-1 Sacramento Kings, home of De'Aaron Fox, who doesn't seem to like In-N-Out Burger still, which is just fine with me. This was originally a one-man podcast. It didn't really go very well. I had originally brought some of my friends in, but I still like to reach out to really interesting people that I come across via social media. So I'm going to be doing that today. Kind of going to go over some stuff that happened with the upcoming WWE TLC pay per view. I like to do these things where I sit down with people and just kind of talk wrestling. It's a great thing to get to know different people from and things of that nature. But you can check out all 65 episodes of the Gully Blanchard podcast on iTunes by searching Gully Blanchard. Rate, subscribe, review. Let us know how we're doing. And also, we're available at gullyblanchard.podbean.com. All 65 episodes are up there. We usually try to give you guys an episode once a week, maybe twice a week, depending on how things go. You can follow me on Twitter at Gully Blanchard, which is GULLYBLANCHARD. Last week, we talked a little bit about the Sacramento Kings with Ricky and Marcus. This weekend, I'm going to talk a lot about wrestling with the guy I've wanted to talk to for quite some time. So without further ado, man, DJ Folk, how you doing?
Just over here trying to put it all together, same old say. As little as people know, I'm a mark too. I talk about it. Even how I do marketing as far as setting up albums is like from a booking standpoint, creative standpoint like that. So you know how I go. But I'm glad to be here though.
Man, thank you very much for making the time, man. I really appreciate it. Where can people find you all over the internet?
All my social media is at DJ Folk, whether it's Snapchat, whether it's Twitter, whether it's Instagram. Even my Facebook is also at DJ Folk. Everything is always DJ Folk, at DJ Folk. No underscore, no nothing.
All right, man, sounds good. So I know there was some news that broke yesterday. For those who don't know, Sunday WWE is going to have one of their, I don't think they're called pay-per-views anymore because of the network. I don't know if they're called big events. I don't know what they're called. But they're having their annual TLC pay-per-view, which stands for Tables, Ladders, and Chairs. This was originally supposed to be a Shield reunion, but due to an illness that has hit the WWE locker room, Roman Reigns is not going to be on the card. He is going to be replaced by Kurt Angle. Um, Bray Wyatt is not going to be on the card. He's going to be replaced by AJ Styles. What were some of your initial thoughts when you first heard about this?
Well, the Kurt Angle news broke on social media, and I'm just like, what? They actually cleared him to wrestle?
Yes.
I'm gonna be honest with you. I don't expect him to do a lot of physical spots, due to the history of his neck injuries and stuff like that. But I mean, I expect that, he's gonna get a huge pop. We know that off because he hasn't wrestled in the Fed in what 9 years, 10 years
I
almost.
think it was like 11. I'd read something like his last match in the Fed was like a house show against Sabu, which is really interesting in itself. But yeah, it's been about 9, 10, 11 years since he's done anything in WWE physical.
Yeah, so it's just gonna be interesting because a lot of us followed him while he was in Impact. I was one of the few people who wanted to see like a wrestler of his caliber in ROH because ROH is such a good wrestling product for in ring. It would have been. Oh, can you imagine him and AJ or him and Steen or El Gentrico or one of them? It would have been great.
Yeah, well, I know when I first heard the news that he was coming back, I initially, following Angle for as long as I have, ever since he debuted back in the 90s, I was a little bit cautious just because, like you said, with the neck, I don't know how much he's really going to be able to do. And a guy like that, I don't see him as being a wrestler who is going to accept being the third man in a six-man tag team, so to speak. Those are usually where they hide the guys that can't do a whole lot, and especially with a pay per view of this caliber. In all honesty, I hope I don't like you. I think he's going to get a huge pop. I just hope he doesn't do anything overboard to hurt that neck or do anything like that. Because for a long time when he came back, everyone was hyping up these certain dream matches that we could get with Kurt, whether it be with Finn or Seth or Roman. But the general consensus was they couldn't clear him because of the health issues. So I hope he just gets out of the match okay more than anything. That was the first thing I thought of when he was coming back after the initial excitement wore off.
I honestly think they're gonna, because I mean Vince, they wouldn't have him wrestle if they felt like that. I think he's gonna be heavily protected. Like they're gonna have to heavily protect him because with the injuries, like he's one injury away from being a paraplegic. If you really think about it.
Yeah, that was something that for me, like when I like I said, when I first heard he was coming back, I was like, oh, I hope they don't put him back in the ring, just because I enjoy the fact that he kind of had the redemption story with coming back in the Hall of Fame, and he's back on television. And just with a lot of these guys as they get older, I worry about, as fans, sort of being selfish, wanting to see the guy come back for nostalgic sake, but I also want him to be able to walk down to the ring next week and the week after, just to make sure from a quality of life standpoint he's doing okay.
Yeah, they're even talking about Sting possibly, and Sting had almost a career-ending injury, and like because that's another reason. I don't know if I haven't really watched a whole lot of Raw, but if you notice, Seth kind of stopped doing that buckle bomb thing after Sting got hurt. He really didn't do that. That and the curb stop, he stopped really doing it for a while. So, I mean, that's what I'm more concerned about. I'm glad he's on the same team as Seth. Seth ain't careless. He's a great wrestler, but sometimes he gets a little overboard and people get injured.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, and I felt the same way. I know Seth and Finn had that good match at SummerSlam where Finn won the title, and then they did that same buckle bomb outside, and I guess Finn, tore his shoulder up, and then he put it back in and finished the match. Which that in itself is insane that wrestlers have the capability to do that and the presence of mind to do that while they're in the middle of a match. But I do think he'll be heavily protected. I know he's going in there with guys that are safe workers from Cesaro and Miz and all those guys. So I trust that he's not going to be put in a spot where he has to take a lot of punishing stuff. I think that's going to go to Ambrose and Rollins to kind of take the heavy lifting and Angle to come in, get some spots here and there. I don't think we're going to see a lot of him doing a lot of chain wrestling, which I personally hope we don't, just because I want the pop and I want him to get out of the ring safe.
Yeah, absolutely. Like because I can't imagine him taking a bro kick. Can you?
No, oh no, no. I can't imagine him taking that. I can't imagine him taking the Cesaro swing. Like, those guys are physical wrestlers, and Cesaro is extremely safe, and as is Sheamus. But wrestling, as they always say, it's not ballet. So I hope the match is designed to sort of highlight what Angle does well and leave the sort of heavy lifting for Ambrose and Rollins to kind of carry the match and have Angle walk out the next night and be okay.
Yeah, because it's all about because they got to set up now. They after this, they're gonna have to set up Survivor Series. So, I mean, I would expect this. I mean, it's gonna be entertaining, and they need it. But you gotta when I was sitting here thinking about it, they have to TLC whatever is called the branded pay per view, whatever big event. They needed something like this to help it, though. I mean, honestly, because I haven't really we said before, I haven't really been following the Fed like I in the last 2 months like I've been because I'm just kind of 5 hours of TV, like you were saying, is just a lot. I watch more NXT out of everything, NXT and SmackDown. I don't really watch Raw. Raw is just like I'm over it now.
Yeah, it's something for me with Raw that we did talk about this before we started recording. You're realistically trying to commit yourself to 6 hours of WWE television on a week to week basis, and especially with Monday Night Raw, like it's hard for me just because it is 3 hours. Everyone has their own different schedule, but you see so many of the quick gifs or whatever it's called, or the quick YouTube clips that are posted on social media, and even with the Roman Reigns and John Cena thing with that feud, like I just saw all the promo highlights, and it's not like how it was to where you have to be there to watch that 3 hours. And I think that's something that television in itself is evolving away from, everything from late night TV to pretty much any episodic television. I think the only thing nowadays it's appointment viewing or live sports games. But even with Monday Night Raw, like I can't tell you the last time I sat down and watched a full 3 hour episode of Monday Night Raw, just because it's difficult to get into a product that is 3 hours. The booking's been inconsistent for quite some time, and it's nothing against the guys that are there. They have a tremendously stacked roster right now. I just, at 33 years old, it's going to be real hard for me to commit to watching 6 hours of WWE every single solitary week to follow with storylines.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think because with everything that's going on in the Fed in the locker room, it's just like you got a lot of talent there, and it's just like yo, you got to figure out how you're going to get all of it on TV. So I guess that's why they do it like that. But at the same time, they stretch themselves thin because creative just can't write that much TV.
Yeah, yeah, that was one thing that's been an issue for me with for a long time with guys like Cesaro, and he sort of found his group with he's found his lane with having the bar with him and Sheamus. But there was a long time where a lot of those guys were victims of start and stop booking, as I would call it, to where Cesaro would have a great match at the end of Raw with the WWE for the WWE title or have that US Open Championship, and we were kind of hoping like, oh, this is finally going to be it for Cesaro, and then 2 weeks go by and it's almost as if that match never happened.
Right. And it's just like, and I'm glad you pointed out Cesaro, like Cesaro. I think Cesaro, people like Big E, Kevin Owens, Sami Zayn, even Kofi and Xavier, the club is prime example of them to stop and go booking. Like, look
Yeah.
at them. Like, they came in with all this hype, and the only AJ and Shinsuke, I think they protected, but they still have, they kind of push them, but then they stop, and then they push them, and then they stop, and it's just like you can't do that. Like them dudes were white hot coming into the Fed. It's just like you can't do it like that because you obviously felt like they were because you're paying them a lot of money. First of all, you're paying them a whole lot of money. In some cases, they said when they got Shinsuke, they're paying them close to $2 million a year. So it's like, why would you go out here to acquire people just to, book them like they're Curtis Axel? I don't like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, it's been hard for me, especially, the club to me, like you said, is a prime example. Like they came in white hot, they did the ambush angle, they did the magic killer, and then it felt like 3 weeks later they were shoehorning Dana Brooke into the group and they were doing weird things with lab coats. I'm like, this is entirely different than the first impression that we got off these two guys that are solid workers. They were solid workers in Japan. It's not as if they can't do the work, but when their portrayed is unexciting or bland, like it's going to be real hard for fans to get invested in that week after week. And I think the club is a prime example of that, to where these guys should be right. They should be working with the bar every night as far as feuding for the championship. And now it's like, well, I don't even know if they're booked on TLC. I don't know if they're on the pre-show, but it's another case of WWE starting something really exciting and then pulling back and then starting it again and it's not working. And then, the creative might look at that as, well, these guys couldn't get over. You have to allow these things time to breathe. And it's been sort of a challenge with a lot of the talent that they have. I actually think they have, name for name on the roster, they have as talented of a roster as they've ever had. But a lot of these guys are victims of looking like chumps in front of the fans. And it's hard for fans to buy into that. And then when you have the huge pay-per-views like your WrestleManias, it's hard for fans to want to spend money to go see these guys when they consistently look like less than superior talents.
Yeah, I agree. Because even like I look at because I'm the biggest CM Punk mark you probably could find. I think a lot of
Yes.
us are big CM, but Punk was prime example of this start and go. Like he went through it his whole career, and it's just like even like if you look at the TV ratings when Punk was champion, they were some of the lowest ratings they've had with people with him as champion in the modern era. So it's nothing. They felt like he couldn't be entertaining when the pipe bomb is still one of the most searched YouTube videos for WWE.
Man, I
So
saw that thing live in Vegas. I was at the show where he did it too, live in Vegas.
yeah, so Punk is right, and it's like it sucks that he had to be a martyr for guys like Kevin Owens, like Finn, the Seth Rollins of the world, so they could even get a fair shot. You know what I'm saying? So I don't know. It's just weird, man, and that's why I'm kind of tuned off on it, and that's why I've been like watching a lot of ROH because even their angles ain't the greatest, but their wrestling and their spots are phenomenal.
Yeah, that was the thing about Punk. And like I said earlier, like I seeing the pipe bomb live and in that Money in the Bank pay-per-view where he got the belt. Yes, obviously that was in Chicago, so it's going to have a little bit of a different hometown feel. And that match in itself is one of the ones that stands out to this day. And even the match that he had with Cena heading into 29, I want to say it was at Dallas where Punk had the pile driver spot, and that match in itself was incredible. But like to take a guy that was so hot after Money in the Bank, and then before you knew it, he was Alberto Del Rio was pigeonholed into that it didn't make sense, and then he was feuding with Triple H, and then he was feuding with Kevin Nash, and it's like you take this guy off of this white hot angle, and you just fed him to Triple H at Night of Champions, and I don't understand why Triple H still went over there, and it like they haven't made to me a mega superstar in a while where it naturally happened organically. I think that, like you said, Punk was sort of the martyr to help. Without Punk, I don't think Daniel Bryan rises to the top of WrestleMania 30. So it's been tough to kind of get behind these guys to where you have an angle such as the one with Punk. And, I'm a huge Punk mark as well. Like Punk and Brett are my two favorites of all time. But when Punk was as hot as he was with the heel turn and things like that, just to have him be fed to The Rock and lose the title like that I didn't think they needed to do. And Punk even said that on Art of Wrestling, like, guys, this isn't going to work. Like, this guy just shows up. And I absolutely understood why Punk decided to walk out, because if you love pro wrestling so much and, you're doing everything that you're taught to do as far as get over with the crowd, bring some solidify the title again, and to have that taken away every time, I can imagine how frustrating that is.
Because, I mean, even with Gallows, you know what I'm saying? Like, you see it, they messed him up with Festus. He was like, they put him in Straight Edge Society, which was the best thing for his career. And then after they broke up Straight Edge Society, I think he was there for a little while, and then he ended up going to New Japan.
Yeah.
And Joey and go ahead.
I was gonna say Joey, Mercury, and Serena also did real well with that as well. Like, the idea of a stable, to me at least, has always been like you have your centerpiece, but then you have guys that, like your Luke Gallows or like your Joey or like Serena, who can sort of funnel out of that, and that can also help launch them into good careers. And I think he did that with those three as well. It just never took off the way it should have, so to speak.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And then that's why, like, when Gallows came back, I'm like, all right, they're going to do it right, with him and Machine Gun. I'm like, yeah, this is the tag team they need, because they're a very capable working tag team, like very capable. And they're veterans, so they're going to protect whoever they need to protect. They're going to, they're going to do all the right things behind the scenes that they need to do. But you've got to push these guys. Like, I love Gallows. I love Machine Gun Anderson. I mean, Bullet Club, I'm a Bullet Club mark. So it's crazy. I think Vince and them just signed it just to kind of feel like they could diffuse or take something away from New Japan and ROH and all that, but they've done the complete opposite. Like, Bullet Club is as hot as it's ever been to me.
Yeah, if nothing else, the thing that they're doing even now with the Bullet Club, like, to me, I enjoyed the previous versions of it, with Machine Gun and Finn and AJ. I enjoyed that a little bit more, but I give, the guys like Bucks and the Villain and all those guys, I give them a ton of credit for, if nothing else, essentially it's a Japanese wrestling clique or stable that has been able to get that over in the mainstream organically, with everything from getting those shirts inside a Hot Topic, and you go to any wrestling show and there's Bullet Club t-shirts all over. So I do think there's a lot of truth to what you said about, I don't know if Vince just signed those guys because he was told by someone how popular they were in Japan and just didn't have an interest in using them. I know something that Heyman said in his documentary was Vince would always prefer guys be in the castle pissing out, so to speak, as opposed to guys on the outside pissing in. And I think there's some truth to that in why he signed guys like, Machine Gun and Gallows, who were over as monsters in Japan, and he brought them over. Same thing with Tensai. Like, Tensai and Machine Gun had a good thing going, or Prince Albert, or, whatever inclination you want to call them. Like, those guys were over huge in Japan, and they come over to the States with a ton of fanfare. And 4 or 5 weeks later, they're just looked at as just another set of guys.
Yeah, and even that's why I'm so interested to see how they're gonna do all these ROH guys that's going there, like in NXT. But I think NXT is such a safety net for like Adam Cole, Bobby Fish, Leo. Donovan Dijak is gonna get fast tracked. You already know that's a Vince type of guy. Me and you both know he's gonna get fast tracked. He's like Drew. I'm gonna be honest with you. If Drew McIntyre's there past Mania, I don't know what they're doing with him, because he's a Vince type guy. He got himself hot. They put the NXT title on him. He's gonna do everything he's told. So they're gonna what you know what they're gonna do? They're gonna bring him back, put him back in the good graces, and then they're gonna mess him over again, like they always do.
It's been interesting because even a guy like even Bobby Roode coming up from NXT, like that's been another one that you couldn't have brought the guy up when he was any hotter. I mean, the glorious entrance, the glorious theme, like, you know, say what you will about the guy in the ring, he's solid, and it's like these guys are coming up from NXT, and kind of like you said, like they're gonna fall by the wayside in 3 or 4 weeks. Like Bobby Roode should not be feuding with a guy like Dolph Ziggler right off the top. Like it's been tough to see that with a guy like that when we know how talented he is and things like that, to just have him be as hot as he was in NXT and then it just goes away.
Dolph is another person. Like Dolph, you couldn't 2014, 2015. Dolph was the hottest wrestler, and they like he should have had the belt to me, and they messed it up.
Yeah, I agree. Especially after him cashing in after WrestleMania 29, like he couldn't have been any hotter.
Yeah, I don't get it. Like you, I mean, I sit here and watch the mismanaged talent, and it goes to like honestly what it's gonna take. And you know, the rumors have been saying, you know, there's a real locker room mutiny. Like people want to get their releases and all. People are saying it was just people sick, but there's really some where there's a little bit of smoke, there's fire. That's what I've always been told. So I mean, I've heard Bray and Bo want to leave, minus this viral inflation. But I've heard they're contemplating leaving because can you imagine a Bray Wyatt and Bo Dallas in Ring of Honor or New Japan?
I think Bray would be over huge in either one, especially a guy like Bo. And you know, Bo's been saddled with real tough gimmicks. He's had like the Bo leave thing, which was funny for what it was, but it wasn't something long term that I think fans would get behind. But I've never really seen a Bo Dallas match where I was like, yeah, this guy can't go. Like, yeah, like WWE's giving him all these chances and he's not making it work. Especially a guy like Bray. You know, when Bray got the title, I want to say it was around Elimination Chamber. Like, I was like, okay, cool. Like, they finally got it right. Like, this guy was supposed to be the next Taker. He was supposed to be the guy to take over for Cena at WrestleMania 30. And it seems like every WrestleMania, he's there in a weird spot to where I can't WrestleMania matches and be like, how do you keep missing the ball with this guy?
I think that's their biggest problem. They do a lot of placeholder champions like Bray. I mean, Punk's first run, he was a placeholder champion. Who else? I mean, even I love this Jinder Mahal push, but I know it's coming. They're only going to do it till the end of the India tour, and then he's going to probably lose it at Rumble. There's no way he keeps it past Rumble. Me and you both know that.
Yeah, like I was initially impressed with, you know, if nothing else, Jinder's gotten better, but it's something about his run. I don't feel like he's the top guy in the company. And I've always been a firm believer, like your champ should be the top guy. Like that should be essentially their Super Bowl. Like your champ should be the number one guy in the company. And even the way he was positioned on Hell in the Cell, like two guys with, you know, Jinder and Shinsuke, and they've had their own issues with Shinsuke, which I can't quite figure out where they're missing. But even a guy like Jinder, that Jinder is their champ, and it does feel like it is more so like, okay, he's just holding this until the India tour where he drops it to say, you know, an AJ or Kevin Owens or something. But again, like I feel like we're going to end up seeing Jinder back at WrestleMania 34 in something like the Andre the Giant Battle Royal, and it just sort of they're having a hard time, I think, making main event stars that are credible.
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna be honest with you. This year they should have, like, I know Kenny loves just doing what he's doing in Japan and being such a huge star, but they should have backed up the bench. Kenny Omega is the number one wrestler in the entire world to me right now. I mean, it's debatable to a lot of people, but he has the charisma. He's an incredible worker in the ring, and he can talk. That's the three things that you need. The last person that could do that in the Fed to me was Punk.
Mm-hmm. See, I'm on the other side to where I'm actually, and I'm a big Kenny Omega fan as well. I do think he's one of the top guys in the company. Like, I just rewatched the Omega Okada match from the G1. It was on Access last night, and I watched it. And his stuff blows me away. But I actually enjoy the fact that he's in New Japan, and I think this says more about WWE to where my fear is he signed, Vince bracks up the Brinks truck, he comes into WWE, and the next thing you know, he's doing 5-minute matches in the middle of the card with Dolph, and it's like, I would rather this guy put on 40-minute matches with Okada. I'd rather watch this guy from a selfish standpoint. Like, I'd rather watch this guy tear it up in New Japan and be one of the guys that helps bring New Japan along with the Bucks and along with the Bullet Club into the U.S. mainstream more than they have now. Like, I'm perfectly fine with watching him tear it up in New Japan, because my hesitation when they signed Shinsuke was like, they're not going to know what to do with him. And I just don't know if WWE is going to allow Kenny Omega to be the cleaner, or if they're going to turn it into another situation to where, he's going up against, random WWE guy in a directionless feud.
Yeah, because I know a lot of people like the Jericho Owens feud, but I was one of those people that were just like, every time they get somebody, it's always they put them in a feud with Jericho. I love Jericho, but Jericho is about 7 years past his prime, so to speak.
Yeah.
So it's like, why do you keep doing this? It's like they do this, and then it's either Jericho or Dolph. Those are the two guys that always throw in the feuds with people. And I'm like, yo, that formula is broken. You need to figure it out and come up with something fresh.
Yeah, and even a guy like, and that's why I'm kind of looking at Omega and being like, well, dude, just stay in Japan, tear it up. Like, he seems to like the culture from everything I've read about him. And it's like, if that's where you're happiest and that's where you are able to apply your trade to the fullest, like, coming to WWE might not be the right thing, just because I don't trust the guys in charge of WWE to take this golden goose and be like, okay, we're going to let Omega have 30-40-minute matches with AJ or Finn or things like that, to where I think that I don't think they're going to be able to use him correctly. And that's been a huge indictment of WWE, really for the past 5 or 6 years, where they've got a ton of talent. They're not using it to build new megastars. They're giving us kind of stars and they're taking them away, and kind of stars and taking them away.
Yeah, because look at Apollo Crews. Like, he should have stayed in NXT another 6 months. Like, he would. Like, Triple H fast tracked him, because he looks the part. He's a great in-ring guy. He just doesn't have the charisma or mic work to really, like, you got to protect him and put. I don't know what brand is he on, because he feels like he's on Raw.
He's on Raw. He's doing something with Titus O'Neil to where Titus is sort of the mouthpiece for him, which is protecting him. Yeah. But I agree. Like, he's another guy that came up after Mania, and I'm like, okay, this guy has. He has the smile to be the face of the company. He has the athletic ability to be in there with any wrestler that they have. And again, 5-6 weeks later, he's doing matches on the pre-show, to where I'm looking and I'm like, again, this is another opportunity of wasted, WWE not doing what they need to do with the current talent that they have.
Yeah, like, I wouldn't be surprised in the next 6 months if Apollo ends up getting his release and goes to like ROH or Impact and tear it up, to be honest with you. He's one of those candidates, because it's about 12 wrestlers. I think if they're in another company, they're top guys.
Yeah, like, there's the Apollo. I think there's Bo. There's Bray. There's a ton of guys that they have, to where I think that's again where the competition aspect is. Ending the Monday Night Wars, which was almost 20 years ago, but ending those wars, it was one of the tougher things for WWE, because now there's no competition. Like, now there's no reason for them to get better, or no reason for them to take risks or take chances with the talent. It just feels like it's a very safe and secure promotion, as opposed to, when we first started watching it, or when it was at its peak in the 90s, to where you knew you were getting the best that both promotions had back then.
Yeah, that's why I like New Japan. I really want New Japan and ROH. I know they co-promote a bunch of stuff, and they lend out talent. But I really, in the States, I would love for them just to come all the way together and just be that, because Impact is never going to get it together. Me and you both know that.
I stopped watching them years ago.
Yeah, so it's like, and then I like what Billy Corgan is doing. Like, I just want to see, it's going to take a while. It's going to take him 5-6 years to get that promotion really rolling. Mm-hmm. But if they come, because I like, that New Japan they got the US U.S. New Japan U.S. title now. So Kenny Omega is the U.S. champion. But what I think they need to do, these guys that fall by the wayside for the Fed, like Kenny's a developmental, reject for them. So
Yeah.
like just grab all those guys because there's something there, and that's what's gonna light a fire in them, and they're gonna become like, look at Cody. Cody's not the greatest worker in the ring, but that American Nightmare is the greatest thing he could have ever came up. He's re-energized his whole career.
And you even look at a guy over there like Juice Robinson, who was CJ Parker in NXT and was kind of floundering. Like, just a guy like that who's, he didn't necessarily jump out to you in NXT, or at least he didn't to me, as far as a guy that like they needed to push. But he's having a ton of success in New Japan. Like, he's in G1, he's in prominent roles in the company, and if they can get a guy like that over for a couple tours and get him to that level, like the exodus of talent that seems to be coming from WWE, you can get a guy like Bray and Bo over there, trade them off with ROH every now and again, and you can tell these guys like, hey, we're going to give you an opportunity to be great. And I do think that New Japan attempting what they did in California with running those Long Beach shows, I hope that's the first of many more to come, because I think anytime that those guys that aren't being used well in WWE, who might be complacent or frustrated, have another outlet or another place to go, such as, the rumor is that Neville either walked out or is asking for his release or is negotiating his release, but I can't wait to see him essentially in an ROH or an Impact, if Impact could ever get their shit together, or something like a New Japan where he can be in there with Ospreay or Ricochet or Kushida or anything like that. Like, having him go over there and be able to tear it up and do what WWE signed him to do, possibly in another company, I think that opens up a ton of doors for guys in the future.
But the biggest thing is with Lucha. If this Lucha stuff turns out to be true, where season 3 is the final, Ricochet is saying he's pretty much about to be free to sign with whoever he wants to. So he's coming to NXT, or he might be going to tour. Like him, they're gonna end up putting, like, this is what I'm scared for him. They're gonna end up putting him on 205 Live, and we're gonna be all like, he's gonna kill it, and nobody cares.
Yeah, and that's the hard thing about 205 Live is that I remember when we were, when I was watching the cruiserweight stuff in WWE, and there was such a difference in talent between the cruiserweights and the guys on top, like the NWO and things like that. So there was a significant difference. But I think now with 205 Live, like, they have this opportunity to be different. But I don't know if they're not putting enough into it, or it just doesn't feel special the way that I was expecting it to feel when they first debuted. Like, I'm a huge Cedric Alexander fan, but it's just something about that product and that show doesn't feel like it's something that I can't see on the main roster, or it doesn't feel like there's enough development in the guys for me to really want to get behind that.
Yeah, like I'm not, I'm not the biggest Drew Gulak fan. I like Rich Swann as Cedric. I like TJP. You know what I'm saying? And bringing Brian Kendrick back was just like, why?
Yeah, I thought when they brought Kendrick back, I thought it was kind of like bringing essentially Kane back in WWE, to where it's like, okay, we're going to bring in an established guy to help these guys sort of get better. There's still some sort of name value in Kendrick being there as a guy to help season the younger guys. But even now, like, it just doesn't feel like there's anything special about that division. I know they tried to bring Enzo over there to kind of spice it up, but I just don't like. I don't feel any real inkling to watch 205 Live, because I don't know if it's the way they're doing it or the way the characters are being shown on television, but it just doesn't feel special.
No, it doesn't. It's just like you get a little burnout because you got all these shows and all these whatchamacalls, and they want you to watch, especially you're Mark like me, they want you to watch all these shows, and half the time when I'm on the network, I'm watching old stuff anyway. Old stuff in NXT. That's the only things I watch on the network.
What are some of the, and I do this too, man. I'm a sucker for like WCW pay-per-views from like 90 to 93. With the Stings and the Flairs, and just, I actually like the video intro packages to see how different the stuff was filmed back then. But what are some of the last things you did watch on the network that was sort of the older school stuff?
Well, because like how I got into wrestling, both my grandfathers watched like Georgia Championship Wrestling and the TBS wrestling. You know what I mean? So they had me watching that. But my other grandfather in North Carolina, my dad's father, we would watch WWF stuff. Like he used to have me watching like Superstars and what was the other one? Superstars, was it Wrestling Challenge?
There was Wrestling Challenge. There was a Saturday Night Main Event. There was
Yeah, yeah. So I started with my grandfather here in Georgia. We would watch Saturday night. Saturday night, 6:05. Everybody
Oh
remembers
yeah,
that. Yeah,
305 out here, man. I remember it well.
yeah. So that was the stuff that was what initially got me into wrestling was both. I used to sit with them and just watch wrestling, and like I would be captivated. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's what because I know recently I went back and watched all the old Saturday Night Main Events, and I remember being captivated with like the Mega Powers in Hogan and Savage, and kind of how they brought Warrior up. Like I didn't get a lot of Georgia Championship out in California. I got the Saturday 305 for us, which was the WCW or NWA show, but a lot of the stuff that I grew up watching was the Saturday morning Hulk Hogan, Randy Savage. But then as I sort of found a lot of the older stuff on the network, watching a lot of the old Super Brawls or the old Starcades when they were still the NWA. Those things are still fun to watch. Like some of the stuff is comically bad, but you'll get a gem here and there. Like you'll get a Steiner's, Terry Gordy and Dr. Death Steve Williams, or you'll get some good Sting and Vader stuff. But those are the stuff that I just enjoy watching them. Where like you get a lot of Stunning Steve Austin and Brian Pillman versus Jushin Thunder Liger. Like those are the things that I go back and find myself enjoying watching a lot more now.
Right. And what's crazy, what's so coincidence? Arn Anderson and my mother went to high school together. Because Arn Anderson,
really?
Yeah, Arn Anderson is from my hometown, Rome, Georgia.
Okay.
So Arn, he lives in Charlotte now. He still has some family around, but nobody's seen Arn in my hometown in about 7-8 years. Ric Flair he had an autograph signing about 7-8 years ago, and he came in for that with Rick.
Yeah, like that was Arn was somebody like Arn to meet guys like Arn, Barry Windham, Stan Hansen. Those are guys that I didn't really understand how good they were until I got older. Like I go back and watch those Flair and Barry Windham matches, or the way that Arn would kind of be that stabilizing force in the Horsemen. It's so much better to watch that stuff now, where I have a better appreciation for it.
Yeah, I always tell people, like, they always talk about Austin and his antics. I'm like, yo, you never saw him when he was in the Hollywood Blondes. Like, the dude was super technical. Like, he was he was really the new Arn Anderson at the time.
Yeah, with that Dangerous Alliance and that in itself, like that had so much talent. Like you look at a Heyman, Medusa, Rick Rude, Bobby Eaton, who again, I didn't understand how good Bobby Eaton was in the ring until I got older and started watching the stuff back. But that whole roster of guys, even with a young, stunning like Steve Austin, it's just incredible how good they were at that time. And like, it's so much fun to go back and watch those old Wrestle War pay-per-views, or watch the way that Heyman would sort of bring in the Austins and Rick Rudes and how they would feud with Ricky Steamboat. And I think a lot of people remember Rick Rude from WWF, but he did it, to me at least, I think he did his best work in WCW, feuding with Steamboat and Sting and guys like that.
I think Rude wasn't Rude in AWA as well?
Before WWF, I believe he was, yeah.
Yeah, like, because what's crazy, I used to watch when it became, NWA and then WCW, Georgia Championship, but I was real early. I was like, I was real young, and I was, I might have been 3 or 4 seeing that. But whatchamacallit, AWA used to come on ESPN, and that's when I used to, I caught up on like the Kurt Hennings, Nick Bockwinkel and all those guys, and some of the Rockers when they were the Midnight Rockers.
Oh yeah.
When they were a knockoff of the Midnight Express at first.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
it's just, it's fun to watch that stuff as they're older, because you can see, I think you see a lot more of what these guys were in the beginning, and it makes more sense to, a guys like Sean and Marty were having good matches in AWA, and just to see them sort of gradually progress into WWF and where they went, it's fun to go back and watch that stuff on the network.
But it just shows you, like, because even like I was talking to like me and Kaz, Real Life Kaz on Twitter when they were talking maybe a year ago, we were talking about how the Attitude Era, when you look back at it, the wrestling was not really that great.
It was trash. I'll come out and say that shit was trash.
it was horrible, but everything else was entertaining. And I think it's kind of the reverse now. The
Yeah.
wrestling now is 10 times better than it's ever been in the Fed, but the entertainment portions are horrible, and that makes me not. I just want to watch the wrestling.
Yeah, that's something like I've had arguments with people about this to where, at one of the jobs I had before the job I have now, like I would literally just sit there and binge watch WWE Attitude Era stuff pretty much the whole day. And you go back and watch, like there's a lot of stuff in that Attitude Era that I think people look at that. I think people, I'm in my early to mid 30s, and I think a lot of people that I follow on social media that I talk to about, the Attitude Eras are as well. And we have like this weird remembrance of the Attitude Era because of the characters, the Austins, the Shawns, the Triple H's. But you really go back and try to watch a Monday Night Raw from 1998 or 1999, which is arguably the peak of the Attitude Era. There's a lot of stuff in there that, you're getting a young Mark Henry. You're getting stuff like the Truth Commission or the 17th redo of LOD or the oddities, and a lot of that stuff's really, really tough to watch from an
Mm-hmm.
in-ring standpoint. But a lot of, the guys definitely, and it shows now as opposed to then, to where the guys back then had a lot more freedom to naturally sort of find what their characters were looking to do. And some of them didn't work. Like for every Stone Cold Steve Austin, there's about 4 or 5 Mark Marrows and
Mm-hmm.
stuff from a character standpoint that just didn't take off. But I'd much rather go back and watch, a Seth Rollins Cesaro match from 2017 and find a way to sort of wish that they could incorporate the character development of those guys. Not necessarily the way they did in 99, because I think, society was so much different. You can't do a lot of this stuff now. But I do think there's value in giving these guys now a lot more freedom to be themselves. And I think that's one thing that they're missing, because I had a huge connection to as much of CM Punk as I knew. Like obviously we know about these guys what we think we know. And especially with Brett, like Brett was my favorite wrestler of all time. Like I met him in an autograph signing. I was 25 years old and I legitimately forgot how to speak. And I met him again a couple of years ago. I met him about a year ago this time. And I was hyping myself up because I'm like, I just got to put a sentence together. Like, I just got to put a sentence together. And even meeting him, like, I stumbled on my words just because it's like, oh my God, like, this is Bret Hart. Like, this is the guy that you feel sort of a connection to on a personal basis because after reading his book and, watching his career. And I think that's something that WWE is missing nowadays, where you don't really feel as connected to the characters the way that we used to.
Yeah, because even because everybody because they look at my bio and whatchamacallit, they like the excellence of facilitation, but all the marks get it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I got it. Yeah.
Yeah. So everybody just like, yo, that's kind of hard. That's like, I'm like, yeah, I got that from Bret Hart. You know what I'm saying? And then because a lot of my stuff that I do, is a lot because people think I'm hard to work with sometimes in the music business. I'm like, yeah, I'm rap game CM Punk. Mm-hmm. So, I got both of those things, like whatchamacallit, and then they're just like, I get it now. Everybody, once I tell them, the stuff, they really kind of understand, how I move musically is like really wrestling, creative wrestling booking.
Yeah, and it's been tough, man, because like I've always been a big Punk fan, and you kind of have that different sort of connection to these guys to where, watching that Best in the World DVD, like you kind of understood how frustrating, you kind of understood like the emotion of how frustrating it was for him to start, stop, start, stop. So then when he finally got that run with the title, it was kind of like, oh, cool, like they're finally going to go with this guy that we've believed in for so long. And I just, it's been tough for me to find a guy like that, find a guy or a girl really that I can sit there and really get behind in that standpoint. I think that's something that's made the product a little bit hard to watch lately.
I think the problem is the product is too scripted now. That's the biggest problem. Like
I agree.
When honestly, if Punk was here now in the Fed, unscripted, man, the ratings would be through the roof.
Absolutely, man. I think he felt. I think more than anything, like he felt like someone who was just real. Like it felt like we really understood the emotion and the struggle that he had to go through to get to where he was. There's a lot of that in Kevin Owens because I see a lot of sort of the guy who is doing this to feed his family, and he talks about how important that stuff is. And he's a guy that I really enjoy watching him work. And I was really disappointed, even though I understood and took the belt off him. Like, I understood WWE's version of it, but I just didn't like the fact that he got the belt took off him like that for Goldberg, just for Goldberg to feed it to Lesnar at Mania. Like, I thought that was a program that really didn't need the WWE title, Goldberg and Lesnar again.
But see, that's the problem. They did it. They do that all the time. They use people as placeholders. And it's like, yeah, we're gonna say you're the guy, but the belt really doesn't have that meaning anymore. But we need the belt for this big program. It's like contradicting itself. You feel me?
Yeah.
And they've got to figure it out.
Yeah, it's been tough because they did that again with our guy Punk. Like, I didn't feel that, when Punk lost the belt to Rocky at the Rumble, I was actually at that Rumble. It was in Phoenix, and me and my friends drove down from Vegas, and it was tough because they had this organic thing going with Punk, and the heel turn that I thought was really well. Like, you could sort of relate to the guy that was disgruntled with his job. And then The Rock came in, and I've said this before multiple times. Like, you go back and watch those promos, Punk absolutely washed Rock every time on the mic.
Yeah.
Like, it wasn't even close. And then just to have him lose the belt to one people's elbow, it's kind of like, well, we were behind this guy for so long. And then what you're telling the fans is this guy can come in who hasn't wrestled in about 7 to 8 years. This guy can come in off the street and beat your top guy. Why do I need to keep buying into this other guy down the road? And Punk had the best match on a bad WrestleMania 29 card with Taker, but it just felt like that was the guy that should have been defending his title and putting Cena over at the time.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like, and then my biggest thing with if these guys are your top guys, why aren't they wrestling in main events at Mania? You're force feeding us Roman, and Roman is like, honestly, when the Shield first came in, I like Roman, just that destroyer, didn't talk much. That was perfect. Now you're trying to force feed him, and that's why they did it with The Rock. You got to remember, they did it with The Rock when he first came on the scene. It's the exact same thing, except this is a whole different era, and it's not going to work this time.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, I thought they did that with Rock too, because they force fed us this guy with the strange, the silly haircut and the smile, and I do this for the fans and I want to give my best effort. And when they let him sort of be who he wanted to be in Nation of Domination, it felt real. And the hard part I have with Reigns is, like, when Cena and him had that promo battle, it didn't seem like it bothered Roman. And that was something that, for me, and I've said this on earlier podcasts, to where the thing I liked that Punk and Cena had was you could tell that Punk had this emotion and had this bitterness and had this anger that was transparent on television, to where you really felt like, okay, I may not like this guy, but I can totally tell how being the champ means the world to him. And I felt like that's been missing with Reigns sort of since he's gotten the nonchalantness of, like, I'm not a good guy, I'm not a bad guy, I'm not the guy, or like, this is my yard now. Like, none of it really seems like it matters to him, to where it's like, well, if the fans don't feel like you care, the fans aren't going to care. And I think that's been a huge miss that they've had with Roman since he started.
Yeah, because I'm just like, when I watch the product, I'm just like, you've downgraded AJ. Shinsuke is a great worker on SmackDown. Kevin Owens is my guy. Like, look at even with Sami Zayn. Like, man, Sami Zayn was as white hot as anybody could be coming from NXT, and look how they've done him. And it's just like, I'm so scared I want for Adam Cole, because Adam Cole is Shawn Michaels 2.0.
Yeah.
No matter what anybody says, he's Shawn Michaels 2.0. And, like, if they do it wrong, he's going to end up looking like Dolph Ziggler or worse.
Yeah, like, that was something I was really excited for Cole to debut at that NXT TakeOver at the end of the show. Like, I thought that couldn't have been done any better. Like, they nailed his first impression in WWE. Bring him up, and he's just going to be the Drew McIntyre. He's going to get the Drew McIntyre chosen one thing, to where in a year or two he's going to be, wrestling Kalisto on 205 Live, and that's nothing against Kalisto. I think Kalisto's great, but you have a ton of potential main event talent that needs to be like, they have all these possible stars in the world. They're just they keep being hesitant, and I don't know what that's doing to the product as far as a long-term standpoint. But there's only so many times you can go back to Goldberg in the main event of WrestleMania. Only so many times you can go back to Undertaker, and it showed at WrestleMania 33. Like, I was a huge Undertaker fan, and I'll be 100% honest. I never want to see that guy wrestle again, just because it feels like we're watching Seahawks, or you know what I mean. Like, I feel like we're remembering these guys, or like Emmitt Smith on the Cardinals. And I'm a huge Eagles fan, so I didn't necessarily mind it, but like, I don't want my lasting memory of Undertaker to be a guy that struggled and had to be carried through that last match. Like, if that's his last match, let it be the last match. Like, if that's the end for Goldberg, cool. But eventually you have to start getting these guys ready to main event these huge pay-per-views. And sure, you might go from drawing 70,000 to 60,000, because WrestleMania is always going to sell itself. But you have the summer times where now these guys, the fans, have believable competitors, which I think they're missing right now.
Yeah, and like that's why I'm like, because I know another exodus from one of these other companies is coming. Like, I don't know if it, because Kenny only signed for a year, so I don't know if Kenny is like, I know from what Triple H said, Kenny is on their radar for sure.
Yeah.
So, but he wouldn't even have to go to NXT. He's a star as soon as you put on the roster if he's booked right.
Yeah, he's a guy that can come in with all the fanfare. They can build him up. I would love to see Kenny Omega be a blend of the cleaner in WWE's product, but I just don't want to see a watered down Kenny Omega feuding against a guy in the middle of the card midway through, a B show pay-per-view. Like, I would like to see them allow these guys to sort of be what got them there. Yeah, I think they missed that on the club.
I think AJ, how they did him when he first came in the Rumble, that was the perfect spot for him. Then put him in the feud for the belt. You know what I'm saying? The Cena feud, all that was perfect. But now we're in year 2, and it's just like we're coming toward the end of year 2, and we're just like, man, I hope they get it right this third year, because they all of them signed 3-year deals. So this is a big make or break year for everybody that left New Japan, because all of them can go right back to New Japan and back to being main event stars.
Yeah, and the one thing with AJ, like, I'm still holding out hope for AJ to get the belt at Rumble possibly, and I don't have any idea what's going to happen at Rumble, but in a fantasy booking scenario, like, I hope it's something to where they let AJ get the belt at Rumble, and they give us AJ and Shinsuke, and they just say, hey guys, here's 30 minutes, do what you guys need to do, because their matches in New Japan, the one before they all left, before the Exodus, was incredible. Like, I go back and watch that now, and I just keep hoping, like, if they give us 80% of what that would have been, like, that's going to be one of the best matches on WrestleMania. And I wish they would go back to focusing on the guys who made WWE products year round, like letting these guys have these 30-minute great wrestling matches without all the nonsense from the legends that are just there to take up 5 or 10 minutes. That is great, but I feel like it's missing a lot, though.
Yeah, I mean, I honestly think they need to fire their whole creative writing team. Yeah. Like, they have to get fired. Like, Triple H and the guys who do the NXT stuff, even though NXT kind of fell off, and then you got to remember, NXT, everything has to rebuild itself. So after, the Raid, they got Bobby Roode, all those guys. It was still Bobby Roode, Shinsuke. That was great. So it fell off for a little bit, and then here comes Adam Cole, and you're just like, you're right back, like, yo. And then now they're developing like the Street Profits. I love them, but they're gonna bring them up and make them into Crime Time 2.0.
It's funny, that was the first thing I thought of when I saw them on TV. I'm like, oh fuck, like Vince is gonna get them, and it's gonna be JTG and Shad all over again, and it's frustrating. Like, it's very frustrating. And even, I'm a little bit biased because I'm Australian. Like, I really want Peyton Royce and Billy Kay to go up there and do great, but it's the same thing. Like, I don't want to see them in 5-minute matches with Emma or being squashed by Nia Jax, assuming Jax stays with the company. But like, NXT does this so well to where they continually reload and restock their roster. Like every year, you kind of know the call ups are coming. Like a couple of years ago, it was Kevin Owens, Sami Zayn, and Finn Balor, and you knew those call ups were coming, and they were able to restack the roster with Bobby and Joe and Shinsuke, and those guys eventually needed to come up again, and they're starting to restock that with the War Games concept, the Undisputed Era, Authors of Pain, Sanity, and they do a really good job building these guys up and then bringing them to the main roster. It's just I want to enjoy these guys and girls the same way I do in NXT, the way I do in the main roster, and I haven't been able to do that as much.
Yo, is Joe hurt? Because I forgot all about him.
Yeah, Joe, I think he had a couple surgeries after the Lesnar feud. I think he's taking some time off. He should be back soon. I haven't heard anything to say he's going to be out that much longer. I mean, who knows? You might even get him back at TLC. But yeah, I have heard that Joe had a couple different surgeries on, I want to say his elbow or his knee.
Okay.
And he's coming back soon though.
So I'm gonna pose a scenario to you because everybody knows Punk's gonna fight at another MMA fight. But after the Bucks trolled him, with him and Marty, and they trolled him with the Best in the World Bullet Club shirt. I'm gonna be honest with you, because I really think he's gonna go back to ROH. I don't know why. I just got a funny feeling that's gonna happen. How do you feel about that?
I would be okay with whatever he wants to do. It's tough because if he walked away from wrestling, does he want to go back to ROH? Like, is his interest in there? A lot of the stuff from following him on social media makes it seem like his interest isn't in pro wrestling. I would love to see him go back to ROH or go to New Japan and be sort of that guy that is like, and come out and just give him the microphone for 20 minutes and let him say what he has to say. I don't think he necessarily needs the Bucks or Marty to be a part of that, but I would love to see him do anything in pro wrestling that isn't necessarily tied to WWE, because I don't trust WWE to handle that correctly.
Yeah,
I would love that.
I'm the same way, but I feel like I'm playing interview. What other wrestling products you're really invested in out of everything that's out right now?
New Japan. It's just tough because I work 40 hours a week. I commute 3 hours a day to get back and forth to work. So the time I have to watch as much wrestling isn't as much as it used to. Like, I'll follow the New Japan stuff. Like, I follow a lot of it through social media. And, I try to keep up with the G1. I say this every year where I'm going to keep up with G1, and it starts and I fall by the wayside. So I get caught up with a lot of the stuff on Access. Mm-hmm. So I get it a little bit later than I'd like to. I'll follow what ROH is doing through Twitter. So like, I saw a couple of the clips of the Bully Ray thing that happened, and I want to say that's the end, the retirement of Bully Ray as far as the in-ring competitor, because of an injury that I think he suffered with, if I'm not mistaken, the Briscoes.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, and then I keep my eye on sort of what Bullet Club is doing in the States and in Japan. So I like the fact that those guys are making money outside of WWE. I wasn't a huge fan of the Invasion, only because if you're so anti-WWE and you're doing this organically without WWE's help, then you don't need to sort of quote-unquote invade them for the publicity. But that's just me. I mean, that's just me nitpicking. Like, I don't think that they need to do anything to associate themselves with vocally being like at a WWE show, because the brand that they've built has been so anti-WWE. You look at any sort of shows that they do in the major cities, or really any city, and you're going to see a ton of Bullet Club shirts and a ton of Kenny Omega and a ton of Young Bucks shirts, to where I thought that they didn't need to do that invasion. It sort of reeked of, look how anti-WWE we are at a WWE event, which just seems sort of silly to me. But the fact that these guys are out here in Japan and across the country running independents, doing great stuff, I think is incredible. But the short answer, like, I'll keep up with New Japan and ROH. I'm not as invested as I would like to be, and that's just a lot has to do with how much free time I have to kind of get caught up on those products.
Yeah, I mean, I get it, because we know they're real NWO DX marks and their Attitude Era babies, as we like to call them.
Yeah.
So I mean, I get it because I mean, if you look at it, like they kind of do have a point. WWE is like WCW when WCW was winning,
Mm-hmm.
and it's like, but who's going to be the competitor?
And they don't have one right now. Yeah, and that's the hard part is that they don't have a competitor. I think New Japan has the best opportunity to compete with them as far as like I think one thing that ECW did well was ECW presented a product that was so different than IcoPro era WWF. And I think that it was so anti WWE that it was like, okay, like I think this is where Impact screwed up to where Impact tried to be junior varsity WWE when they brought in Hogan and they brought in Flair. And it was like, well, why are we going to watch this washed down WWE where we can just watch the real WWE? And I think one thing that New Japan is doing well is they're presenting sort of an anti WWE product. So I don't know how consistently they can run stuff in the States, but I would like to see New Japan get more of a stronger foothold than they currently have in the States. So that way, at least, hopefully, it sparks something to where it brings the best out of WWE, and I think that's a possibility down the road.
Yeah, because I mean, we know who's the biggest free agents that's going to be. I know besides Ricochet, I know there's a bunch of TNA guys that's left, but nobody. I know Gunner's supposed to be down at Performance Center, but I think it's more of a coaching role. I don't know.
I think Ricochet is probably the biggest one that I can think of. That's the biggest name that fans are going to want to stop what they're doing to watch if he comes to WWE. Like I don't think TNA has really anyone as far as like EC3. I think has been there for a while. I think Eli Drake signed there for a while, but I don't know who's there in North America that's essentially a free agent that fans are going to want to see. I think a lot of that free agency moving is going to come from Japan, whether it's guys coming from New Japan to WWE or hopefully the other way, where guys like Neville are going to leave WWE to go strike it big in New Japan and then maybe even come back to WWE after they sort of made their name. I think Cody is going to be a huge case when it comes to this because this is a guy that left the establishment because he was frustrated and he's made a name for himself across the globe and he's doing his best work. So I don't know if there are guys in WWE that are seeing that and thinking, well, I had this same frustration. Cody left, so I'm going to leave. And then I'm interested to see what Cody does next. Like if he ends up building his name and then coming back, or if he ends up building his name and just staying independent because that's the best thing for him. So I'm interested to see how that goes.
Because I mean, I'm pretty sure, like, I know Jack Swagger was rumored to go to Impact. And, like, that makes perfect sense. Like, Jack Swagger is an Impact type of guy. I think he could work in Japan a little bit, but I think Impact is more for him. Because he can actually, like, Jack Swagger and EC3 would probably have great matches. I think they were in developmental together, if I'm not mistaken.
I believe they were.
Yeah, so when he was what was his name? Derek, what was EC3? Derek Bateman, I think.
Bateman, I think. Yeah, Derek Bateman.
Yeah, so I mean, I think they've worked it before, so that would be kind of cool. I still think that Bo Dallas is gone. I think he's gonna go because I know him and CJ Parker were cool at one point. So I think he's going to New Japan. I think Curtis Axel is going to end up either in Impact or New Japan as well. It's a couple other guys. It's like that we're not going to even see this. That's going to want their release, and we're going to be like, wow, I didn't expect that.
I didn't think that. I didn't expect it with Neville. Like that was the one that shocked me because he's the guy who's been, sort of the face of 205 Live. But to hear about his frustrations, he had sort of the same frustrations that Austin Aries did, and Aries left to where they're not being used correctly. They were left off the WWE the WrestleMania 33 DVD, which cost them a lot of money. So a lot of those frustrations are valid, and I think they're rampant within the company. So I would think a lot of these guys are watching the Nevilles and the Codys to kind of see how they do once they leave the establishment to sort of get a blueprint on how to do it. And I think and I hope that leads to more competition and more places for these guys to develop and enjoy pro wrestling again.
Yeah, I think Neville, he's gonna go back to being if they negotiate this release, like I think they're going. If Neville can, somehow debut back in New Japan as Pac during Wrestle Kingdom, it's over.
Yeah.
It's over.
Yeah, that's a guy that like I watched some of the stuff he did before he came to WWE, and it's absolutely incredible that he was doing as Pac, and then just to see him where he's at now, like he's another guy that has a ton of talent to be a top level guy, and he got pigeonholed into 205 Live, and I could see how that would be frustrating for him when he's seeing guys like Seth and Dean at the top, and like I can do everything that those guys do, and I was just left off of the WrestleMania 33 DVD that cost me a ton of money, and this character is it's start and stop. So I could absolutely see how you might want to make a bigger name for himself somewhere else.
I'm gonna be honest with you, Seth. When he was in the, remember when he's in the three-way? I think at the Rumble with Cena and Lesnar, and he brought back
That was one of my favorite matches.
that match is incredible, and he got to
Yeah,
he got to channel his inner Tyler Black stuff. See when they
with that Phoenix Slam.
yeah, and see when they let Seth do that, Seth is lights out, one of the best performers on the roster. But
I agree.
they wanna do all, they wanna just like they wanna kind of put him in a cage when it comes to
Hmm.
his actual natural ability. Even AJ, I've seen matches, when he was on Raw for a second, right?
I believe so. Yes, not long, but he was there for a little bit. Yeah,
Yeah, like I saw, but you look at the stuff he's doing at SmackDown, it's totally different than the stuff he's doing on Raw. Because I think they let them do a little bit more on SmackDown than they do on Raw. Because Raw is like the 3 hour, kind of what's it
yeah.
called, whereas the SmackDown is like the 2 hours, like wrestling. But it's a little, it's got spots here and there and all that. But I think that's why I kind of gravitate more towards SmackDown than I do Raw.
I'm the same way. I remember as a kid how much better, or not as a kid, as sort of a teenager, and even getting into my 20s, like with the SmackDown 6 with Angle and Benoit and Eddie and Chavo, like how much of a better wrestling program SmackDown always seemed like it felt that it was. And I think they're getting back to that now with, the Shinsuke's and the AJ's and Orton's kind of there to be the consistent, one of the consistent faces of the company. So I think that there's a lot more wrestling involved in SmackDown, which to me at least makes it more enjoyable. If I had a choice, I would probably watch SmackDown over Raw right now.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, like I'll go like what's crazy about my like how I watch wrestling, like ROH right now. I'll watch it like once every 3 weeks. I'll binge watch 3 episodes of ROH TV, and like right now I'm in the middle of watching the Global War stuff, and like
Okay.
I watched the Global Wars in Chicago, and it was it's a cool, good spots. I enjoyed it. But with Kenny Omega, Kenny and the Bullet Club at the end, they're cutting the promos. Oh, that was great. That was classic.
I agree, man. So I'm gonna wrap this up, man. I know you got a lot to get going to. I know I do as well. Where can people follow you again on the social media stuff, man? Let them know what you've got upcoming as far as anything going music wise. What can people look forward to?
So I'm working on a couple projects. I worked on Carter 5 with Lil
Yep.
Wayne, which is sitting in limbo right now. So I don't know. I have 5 records on that I've worked with Jeezy on. He's got a project. I don't know when it's coming, but I know it's we're close. That's all I can say. But I work. I'm the A&R production coordinator. Everything you can think of. I'm probably gonna get an executive producer credit on it.
Okay.
So I got that. Working on something for Netflix. I haven't really told anybody too much. It's some content. It's gonna be really dope whenever we get everything together. That's something for like 2019 or some middle of 2019, but it's early in the process. But I mean, you can find me on all social media, DJ Folk, Snapchat, Twitter. I answer pretty much every. If you tweet me, if it makes sense, I'm not one of those people that just I'm gonna look at the phone and just not tweet you back. Nah, if you're not trolling or nothing, I'm a answer whatever you need me to answer.
Absolutely. But I know that's kind of how this whole idea for the podcast came up. I know I talked to DJ Wally Sparks, and then he came on the show, and then we had kind of fell into each other from there, man. So I really appreciate you taking this hour to at least sit down and talk wrestling, man. It was a lot of fun, and we'll definitely continue to talk and see how things go down the road.
Yep, and my guy Gully Blanchard, you know what it is. This is DJ Folk. Excellence of facilitation, whatever you want to call me. I appreciate everybody who's tuned in. This is a great podcast. Make sure you subscribe.
Thank you very much, man. So yeah, you can follow me on Twitter at Gully Blanchard, Gullyblanchard. Next week, I'll be sitting down with my friends Marcus and Ricky. We'll probably talk a lot about what happened over the weekend with the Kings games. I know myself and Ricky are heading to the DeMarcus Cousins homecoming game in Sacramento. So we'll be sure to give you guys some stuff that happened then. Until then, man, thank you very much for checking out the shows. We try to give you guys some fun stuff every week. And until then, we'll be back next week. You guys have a good week.